Okay, we're good to cook. Um, Today's session is so we have a lot of new members in the community, and I've been asked a few times now to just discuss how to kind of start the path of day trading. So today's going to be more of that, and feel free to raise your hand to enter the stage and ask questions if you're a new trader or if you're just on your path somewhere and you're not sure what to do next. And also, this will act as a good kind of starting point for the video that I'm recording right now, because what I'm going to be recording for this weekend, which I'm recording today and tomorrow, is going to be kind of a 0 to 100 guide, like 0 to pro guide, where I go through almost every single topic that I teach kind of in like 1 to 2 minute intervals and just how to tie them all together in the end. And I'm going to potentially turn that into a series of different things as well, like mental analysis versions and this and that. So we're going to see how the first one does. And if it does really well, then yeah, we'll kind of continue down that path of making more content like that for the YouTubes. This kind of 0 to pro, one video slam, probably be like an hour and a half long, something like that. And just like the idea is that you can watch it once and then, you know, you'll kind of be on your way. So that'll be a cool video to do. Excited for that. And yeah. So let's open this up with just some questions from people. And we have the chat that we can use. I'm going to catch up on that real quick for a moment. Here, taking a look at this, just everybody saying hello, hello, howdy, howdy, howdy. Yeah, okay, good. And so yeah, the first thing I would say about day trading and like the path of learning how to do it is that there's like obviously two components. And the first component is mental, and the second component is your physical, which is your technical analysis. And you know, it can get pretty deep on the technical analysis side and pretty deep on the mental analysis side. So I don't think we're going into the depths of that, but you know, just as an example, like some of the things we had just done recently in mentorship, if you want to think about like the deeper level, and this is just a nice thing to give you everybody a landmark here on how far the mental analysis can go. Like recently in mentorship, actually earlier this week in the last few lessons, we've really been focused on how to learn better and the ways in which our mind intakes information and how do we optimize that. So like the core focus of this was brought up as how do we get higher quality trades more frequently. And so that opens a bunch of different discussions. And okay, first off, as a core level, how do we learn in life? Like, what does learning look like? What is the process of learning? How do we remove errors from that process of learning? And things like that to kind of come to a conclusion where we can self-analyze the way in which we chart. And I would view this very much as, people always ask me, what's my opinion on journaling trading? What's my opinion on analyzing moments of the past? Well, typically I shy away from that and say, well, I give a very, very singular answer. I say, well, it's something I used to do when I first started, but I'm at the point now where I don't find any use for that. So if you find use in it on your own, then that's great. And this is a very generic answer I give most people. And then you get into the deeper side of that. And the deeper side of that is we can self-analyze at a high level, but how do you self-analyze? So I won't get into that, rather than just to show the depths of how far mental analysis can go, just like showing the depths I will on the other side of how far technical analysis can go. And then, so we focus in mentorship on how do we learn more efficiently, which if we can understand how to learn more efficiently, we can look back at our trades that we've done, reduce the errors in them so that we never make those mistakes again. Now, that is something where it's a pretty in-depth set of lessons that we do to go through that. But really the core of it is, okay, let's find how to make higher quality trades more frequently. And that's like a learning path. That's mental analysis. That's the ability to look back at our trades, analyze them, and remove errors in our trading. So that's a really interesting topic. And so your mental analysis goes very far. It goes very, very simple from the basic layers and things like have a good mindset into some, you know, a little bit more advanced things like choice blindness, choice paralysis, environmental triggers, things like that. And then all the way to a more advanced set of mental analysis cues, such as how do we learn? How do we remove errors? How do we train our minds to see more clearly? Things like that. Focus, things like removing errors, etc. Then technical analysis is very much the same. You know, you have very basic level knowledge, which is your beginner's course, advanced course. Future trading starts to break into just opening the idea for more advanced topics. And then you get into like blueprint and butterfly effect and the strategy series and butterfly effect 2 and on and on and on the content goes, right? So there's kind of a couple different levels there. Well, to say a couple is, there's probably like 4 or 5, so it's more than a couple, but there's quite a few different levels of the way in which we can see that information as well. So the path of starting as a beginner is very interesting because you get caught up, I think. And when I say you, I mean people, everybody gets caught up into, how do you scope out this path? What's next? And like, obviously Chartrader's skill tree is a great tool for this. It's unavailable right now because Chartraders will launch in fall, and then that will be available to everybody. And so like, that's great. The skill tree is there to help aid with that. But even your own personal responsibility in learning how to become a better day trader is kind of scoping out a path. And I think I like to break this into, kind of almost like self-awareness in a way. Like, we need to develop systems for ourselves, or paths where we are constantly changing and evolving, and we are constantly getting better as day traders. And I think there's a few areas that might surprise people in the way in which it can help them. So I'm going to be focusing more on those, because I think it's easy to just tell people go level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then you're good. Rather, I would define the very first starting path, and the very first starting path for people is always going to be just starting the material, right? Like just starting the courses, just simply starting that path of, okay, I'm going through level 1, I'm going through level 2, I'm going through level 3, 4, 5, and 6. And so just specifically making a path for yourself on how many videos you're going to watch each day. And I want to talk about efficiency in that. So like our brains are power plants or tanks of gas. We only have so much every day. So when we're learning, I think there's 2 ways we can learn. And I'm going to reflect on myself in this and in the way that I learn. So whenever I read a book or listen to an audiobook, I kind of have like turn off and turn on and off points. Like I've been reading some books lately, some different kind of books, and almost I would read the first chapter of some books and I wouldn't really be interested in them, but I would muddle through them. So like my interest levels just aren't there, and I muddle through them, taking what I can from them. And this is like obviously a low level of focus. I'm taking what I can, but I push myself forward. And then there's other books where the first chapter is an absolute banger. I'm like, holy Jesus, Malone, I've learned so much cool stuff. And then the second and third chapter kind of tapers off, and it's just, that doesn't really capture my focus. And I find myself gravitating towards just, I kind of muddle through chapter 2, 3, and 4. And then maybe chapter 5 again sparks up and I get like this high level of interest. So I miss chapter 2, 3, and 4 as they would be mundane and not really much of anything. And I think people, if you feel the same way, like if this happens to you, please say something in chat, or, use the chat tool, the little bubble where it says Raiders Live on the left-hand side where you have all the channel categories. There's like a little message bubble. Like, go ahead, feel free to use that and type in chat, because I think a lot of people go through this, and I think this is like a very eliminating path of learning. Yeah, and so like everybody's saying this same. This is exactly what I'm going through right now, all the time. Same, yeah. Like this is a common thing that happens to our minds. So like this is what I want to express to people with that regard. So our brains have a couple different ways they function, and this goes into, like, I've been reading a lot about AI lately, which also gets you into the realm of understanding the way the human mind works. So human mind works like this: you have neurons, and like imagine a completely dark. You're in a concert hall, for example, like a very, very large room. You're in a concert hall, and it's completely pitch black, but there's Christmas tree lights absolutely everywhere in this Christmas hall. So if you turn them all on, this place would blind you, right? This is very much what our brain looks like. And so people communicate. Now, we do this from the age of being a baby, like an infant. You even from the 3rd trimester of pregnancy, this actually happens. So what happens is, somebody says something. I say, hello, Dad, nice weather out today, for example. And imagine that hall of Christmas lights that's completely pitch black, kind of like a trail, a string of them light up. And maybe that string connects to another string. So almost like every time somebody says something to you, it's like your neurons in your brain are firing. So it's like almost like they're completely sitting there and they're firing and firing and firing and firing, right? And so like every time we intake information, we're firing. But the problem is, all this firing that's happening is running off a power plant or a gas generator, and there's only so much power or gas in the generator before there's nothing left. And so with that's the way we interpret language as a model from the exterior world. Every time we look outside and we're looking at mountains, we're analyzing a forest, we're driving our cars, people are just simply saying something to us. It's like, hey, how's the weather today? These neurons in our brain, this is the way our minds work. They fire, and it's like almost like lights down a pathway that light up, and they all kind of function into different ways and all hit different parts of the brain, right? Because that's the way our brain works. Beyond that, we have like this honeycomb like structure in our brain. Almost imagine it as mountains or dunes of sand growing, or mountains growing, or speed bumps that can move up and down. Imagine like every time this is not interpretive language, by the way. We interpret language, and these neurons in our brain light up, and that gives the path of like listening and focus. The next part of your brain is that you have like hexagon shapes in your mind, or honeycombs, or dunes of sand, and they form as you're thinking. So these dunes of sand are honeycombs. And then the honeycomb shape actually in science is something of great study for this exact reason, because it's very relatable to the brain, because our brain has kind of this honeycomb set of structures that are changing constantly and evolving. So this honeycomb grows up or down like a mountain. It goes and it grows in different ways, and every time we are trying to process information, so we have the intake of information, and then we have the processing of information, and every time we process information, it's like these honeycombs in our brain are growing bigger and smaller, or these dunes of sand in this great desert. You just keep these dunes of sand keep morphing up and down, almost like Interstellar, and these worlds are kind of being created by our minds, and that's the way we process information. And so you have different ways in which your brain intakes information. And that to be said, realize that your brain is constantly working no matter what you're doing in life. So the point of this is that you can wake up, look outside, drink a coffee, do this, do that, realize there's only so much gas in your generator, and the gas gets drawn every time there's a thought that comes into our head, whether it's intrusive or not, any kind of logical assertion. That's why emotions have such a big impact on us, because it's a different set of neurons that are firing in our brain to deal with emotions. And then that different set of neurons burns even more gas. So like the preservation of gasoline is the end goal when we're learning, because this is what everybody's feeling here. You know, interest level is huge variable on the ability to learn something with ease for me. Yeah. That's why we have to go through the materials again and again. Did he start? Yes. I feel negative emotions, emotional reactions to events. Use a lot more of that fuel. Yeah. And so this is the thing, like you have to preserve, and this is self-love. At the end of the day, this is self-love. This is the ability to love yourself and to cut out the things in your life that just aren't helping you, right? You have to love yourself and say, like, this is a negative impact on my life. I need to cut it out because it's simply just affecting the way my brain learns. And these honeycomb-like structures, let's say you're in like failing marriage, or you're in a bad relationship, or you have a toxic work environment. Those honeycombs that get created in your brain, what's happening is they are permanently leaving bad shapes in your mind, and like the honeycombs continuously shape. But imagine a smooth honeycomb, and then imagine a honeycomb with prickles. Those prickles damage your neurons. So like when you create these honeycombs or sand dunes, imagine walking over a sand dune that's riddled with rocks. Like, fuck, that would be impossible. Your feet would hurt. It would just be a not fun experience. And then imagine a sand dune that's smooth and gradual. Well, that's easy, and then you can just walk them all day. So part of this is self-love when you're trying to learn, because you need to be able to love yourself, cut out all the negative things in your life, because you're simply damaging your mind and your brain. And these neurons, they don't last forever, right? There's studies on, you can go take mushrooms, for example, like shrooms, the hallucinogenic drug that reconnects these neurons to your brains. And I'm not recommending people do that. I'm just saying there's scientific evidence that these neurons aren't permanently damaged. Rather, they just disconnect. So imagine it's almost like those Christmas tree lights. You've unplugged a string of them here and there. And over enough time, you've unplugged so many Christmas tree strings that all of a sudden your neurons, they can only fire in so many different ways. So, you know, one of the big impacts of hallucinogenic drugs is they actually can reconnect the neurons in your brains, like ayahuasca, for example. People go on ayahuasca trips because, well, it's trendy and it's cool and it's an experience, but really what's happening is it's reconnecting those Christmas tree lights. Like you're plugging back those neurons so they can fire again, so that the depths of your mind can reach further and further and further. And the problem is we age, is those Christmas tree lights get unplugged. We never plug them back in. And then what happens is we continue to age and our neurons can only fire so far. And then there becomes a point where those neurons can't be plugged in anymore because they've been unplugged for too long. So like we prevent those Christmas tree strings from being unplugged by loving ourselves, by cutting out and not creating spiky honeycombs in our brains. Because this at a biological level, this is literally what's happening. I'm not paraphrasing. This is the actual science and chemistry that happens in your brain. So this isn't paraphrase, a parody of. This is if you were to take things under certain MRI machines or under microscopes, if you could break apart brain tissue as a living organism and have it still function, if you could hook it up to a machine, you would see this is what's happening at a cellular level. You're creating spiky or prickly honeycomb shapes in your mind that damage because when they rub against each other, they scratch them, they scar them. So this is what's happening at a level where scientists go through and take brain measurements with MRIs and can see the neurological effects of what it looks like when neurons are firing, when a brain is trying to compose thoughts. So this is reality and what it looks like. So the first part of this is preserving those, and this all directly connects to learning, by the way, and how we learn. So the first part of this is self-love, to create environments around you that don't unplug those Christmas tree strings. They don't unplug your neurons, because every time your thoughts are composed in negative ways, those neurons are diminishing. So we're talking about science hacking your brain. So number one, we love ourselves and we set a quality of life with boundaries with those we love and boundaries with work. We set a quality of life and even I struggle with this sometimes. Like, as much as everybody looks up to me, even I struggle with self-love sometimes. And sometimes I let people take advantage of me. Sometimes my kindness and the fact that I'm doing something so great brings out insecurities in other people. And I fully realize this. So for example, people make hate content about me. It's because how honorable I am and what I do, I realize that brings out insecurities in other people. So people who make hate content or something, you can look at the trail of what this actually means from a level that's comes from genuine, true emotion and intellect. And that's because I end up acting so honorably. It highlights people's insecurities. Those insecurities then allow them to go into these toxic natures. That's fine. I let them damage their own brains. That doesn't affect me, right? So that's the thing that you have to have and cut out of your life. You have to cut out the bad relationships, negative work cycles, people, maybe step parents or mother or father-in-law, or your actual biological mother and father, siblings, relationships, anything that doesn't let you love yourself. Everybody needs to start cutting that out, because that is the damage that's being caused, so that your learning path is diminishing over time. So this is where people are saying, I read a book, chapter 1 is awesome, chapter 2, I can't hang on. This is because you don't have enough self-love in your life to let those neurons constantly fire at a high rate. So your power plant, if you would think of it as a power plant, or your gasoline left in your generator, it's trying to reach the depths of your mind, make sense of things. Those Christmas lights are unplugged, so it's constantly putting its foot down on the gas. It's constantly revving super far. Like, you're constantly just pushing down on the gas pedal to try to reach those neurons that can never be reached. So when your brain is thinking, what's happening is your gas it's like revving a car to the red line, and you're just holding it, expecting to gear up, but you don't have any gears left and you can't go any faster. You're in third gear, but somebody removed fourth, fifth, sixth, and maybe even seventh if you got a really nice car. It's maybe even eighth. It's removed all those gears from the gearbox, and you're redlined only going 60, and every car is passing you going 100, but you don't have a fourth gear. Someone removed it. That's what happens when you don't have self-love. This is critical to the learning path, because it burns through fuel, and all of a sudden you have short bursts of learning that you can entertain, and that is it. You can read a chapter and the rest sucks. So you could still read a book, but realize if you have a 20 chapter book, you got to limit yourself to some people might be 1 chapter a day. Some people might be a half a chapter. Some people might even be 5 pages. So this is critical in terms of the preservation of our ability to think. Now, the next part is understanding how to plug those neurons back in. I will not get into the things that I would recommend. I will simply just say ayahuasca, hallucinogenics, all that stuff has been proven in science to work. I've tested some of these things. I would agree that they work. People have to do their own research and what makes sense to them, because this is real life health that you're talking about. And a lot of emotions and things come out that happens when you do these things. And so to rebuild the neurons in your mind, realize that if you rebuild those pathways and there's no neurons before it's too late, before they're gone forever, if you have the ability to rebuild them, realize a lot of emotional trauma is going to come out of that, because what's going to happen to your body at a biological level is you are going to feel things that your brain, imagine plugging Christmas tree lights in again, but none of those, like all these strings of lights have color. There's no pink lights left. So you don't know what pink looks like anymore. But all of a sudden you start plugging in Christmas tree lights and you're like, oh, there's a string of pink lights. Wow, what? My mind got rocked. I didn't know we had pink lights. What is this? I thought they were all just blue, red, green, and yellow. All of a sudden you're going to be hit with a flood of emotions that you've never had before. So it is very heavy stuff to go through when you rebuild the neurons of your mind, because all of a sudden what might look like, oh boy, it could be anything. It could be what might look like realizations of a failed marriage, or realizations of a parent who was emotionally abusive to you, or realizations of a father, or maybe even a mother, doesn't matter, a brother or sister, who's physically abusive to you, what that actually means. And then that goes into a deeper part of your cognitive thinking where you're able to accept emotions. Now you're able to accept emotions and you feel this rush of crying, dread, fear, hurt. All these things are because you've plugged those neurons back in and you can now understand what those mean. This is regenerating your mind to learn properly. So this is one of the critical areas where people fail. So this is literally regenerating every single pathway that you've never had. So all those failures to learn, all those things, it's not that wasn't in your mind. It's not that you were not as good as somebody else or you didn't understand. It's not any of these things that we would chalk them up as. I'm not as good. They are smarter than me. This doesn't work. It's none of that. It's simply that the Christmas tree lights were unplugged, so that part of the stadium was dark. That's it. That's it. Simple. We all have the ability to learn this stuff, process it in great depths. Does everybody know here that as powerful as AI is, for example, as great as people think AI is, the power of the human mind is so far beyond what AI could ever accomplish. So far what we know now, maybe in 50 years, maybe in some great amount of time, even to process emotions, even the most basic emotion of a smile, which is happiness, it would require artificial intelligence to have such an advanced set of thinking. It's not achievable. For example, and this is from a book that I read a few years ago. There's an Atari game, well, not a few years ago, it was a year and a half ago. There's an Atari game. It's one of the simplest games ever made. You could give somebody who's never played a video game in their life a controller stick. They don't even know how the controller stick works. That human being looks at the controller stick, they press a button, they're like, oh, this moves left to right. Okay, cool. The amount of thought after that, oh, if we move left or right, that means we could jump on that ledge. That means if we could get up to that ledge, we could get this banana. Whatever the game may be. I don't know the game, whatever it may be. It takes a human being, the most basic, who's never played a video game. So think of your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, whoever. Think of somebody who's never played a video game in their life. This Atari game takes 2 hours to master front to start. It takes AI 900 hours to understand how to navigate the level. Just in context of the simplest game, which is left, right, jump. Simplest game. It takes AI 900 hours to understand how to start navigating that level, or it takes a human being who's never played 2 hours. Now imagine the complexities of life. That touches on the ability to move left and right and jump and understand that there's a scoring metric with points and what those points are. Imagine the level of cognitive thinking that you look outside, see a flower, it makes you happy. It's not possible for AI to learn this. So like, I think a lot of people get stuck in this ability of like, we all have this from a young age. Our brains are so insanely powerful. People don't realize the millions of calculations. When your neurons are firing, you are literally firing hundreds of millions of neurons in your mind every split second of the day. The abilities that our brain have, they're not people in here who are smarter or dumber. We all have neurons. We can all do this. So people have to get that out of their minds too, that I'm not good enough. I can't do this. That's that self-love. That's where your neurons aren't firing because of that self-love. So this is something people have to get out of their minds, is that I can't do this. They are better. Any human being in the world can do this. Day trading and these sciences that I teach, yes, they're complex and advanced. Yes, it takes a long time to learn them. But we're all capable. Let's set that as a preconception. Everybody in this room is capable of learning this. And that is a proven fact through the abilities that our mind have to process, where we don't even understand the power they have. Our brains are, I'm not going to get into the current theories of the world. We're talking about other dimensions exist. They're talking about they can see ghosts now in particle accelerators. Like there's so much. There's so much. Like it's not even worth going down a path. Can we or can we not do this? We just say that everybody with 100% certainty can do this as good as cotton. But self-love is the piece that stops us from seeing that. So that's the piece that unplugs the lights. And then there's a piece that you have to repair those neurons. Repairing your neurons, again, I digress to everybody has their own responsibility to do the version of neuron repair that they see fit. Again, I will just say hallucinogenics are proven in science to be one of the things that can do that. You can take that and Google and see what makes sense for you. But this is a good ground zero starting point that if you're saying, and this could be, I want to be a better basketball player. I want to be a professional race car driver. I want to be the best accountant the world has ever seen. No matter what path in life you take, this is going to be true. And this is going to ring true for everybody. So this is ground zero for I want to learn topic X. Now, we're all in here because we want to learn day trading. This is also ground zero, just like it's ground zero for everything else. This is ground zero for learning how to trade so that at the very base level, you are operating at a point where your mind has lots of power and you have high levels of efficiency so that everything you do learn stays in full. So I will talk about one of the things that we talk about in mentorship to further this conversation a little bit, but I'm going to cut it there because I don't want to get too much into mentorship content. Part of what we do in life is called improvisional mapping. Now, there's different definitions for this. I'm just going to get into one. We have a bad habit in life of improvising what the next step should be. We all do this. It's part of the way that our brain works. This is not something that some of us do or don't do. We all do it. Every time we look at a car, we improvise things in our mind at a psychological level. We say, oh, I wonder what the driver looks like. It's picture in your mind a blacked out car with bronze rims and a big wing in the back. All of a sudden you see a street racer. All of a sudden you see a young person. All of a sudden you see XXXXX. Completely blacked out, like completely murdered out car. It's a little bit lowered, nice bronze rims, big wing, maybe even has like a nice little exhaust note to it. Nothing bad, like one of those nice exhaust notes. All of a sudden you have like this conception of what that person's. This is called mapping. This is what our brain does for every single thing that it ever thinks about. Those neurons hit a certain point and then they try to map the rest of what makes sense. Realize we do this with everything. You take a ball, you throw it in the air, your brain is mapping all the outcomes before it drops. It's saying if it bounces and hits the floor, can it go left? Can it go right? Am I going to catch it? Is something going to intercept it? Is a bird going to fly by and hit it? Is it going to land on my sweater? Is it going to hit the chair? Is it going to have a soft landing and stay still? Is it going to roll after it lands? Is it going to hit me? Am I going to say, ouch? Our brain is going through thousands of outcomes constantly, all the time, everything that happens. Even right now, as I'm speaking, I'm looking at chat, I'm thinking of all the 1,000 different outcomes. I'm doing this at a subconscious level. This is the gas that gets burned every day. This is called mapping. So when we're looking at the charts, realize you mark a level, your brain's mapping without you even knowing it. So it is important to remove improvisational mapping. And what our mind does is it takes all these 1,000 outcomes and it says, what is the most likely outcome to happen? And so it starts removing all the ones that are like 0%, 0.1%, 1%, 2%, and it will cling to the top couple. This one has like a 50% chance of happening. And I throw the ball in the air. So here I'm sitting in my room right now. I'm sitting beside my desk. There's nothing around me. There's no kids. There's no animals. There's no exterior interference. There's nothing. It's a pretty calm environment. Like if I throw a ball in the air, it's going to hit the ground and nothing's going to happen. It might bounce once. This is what's going to happen 90% of the time. Like unless I throw it stupidly, like to the left or the right, maybe it'll hit my desk. And so fine, that's a second scenario that can happen. Realize my mind has gone through 1,000 or 2,000 scenarios of all the different things that can happen. It starts cutting out all of the things that can't happen. Okay. Now we have two outcomes that we cling to. Perfect. Great. So when you get surprised in life, if all of a sudden I were to be shocked, like I gasped, something happened, I gasped because something shocked me, it surprised me, I got scared, right? Like that moment, somebody jumps out of a closet, you're like, fuck off, man. Like, dude, why are you jumping at me, right? Like that scare, realize our brain already processed it. It was just such a low occurrence to happen that it put that neuron in our mind. And this is the feeling of being surprised. We've already processed all these outcomes. Our brain is constantly working 24/7 to process these outcomes. This is called mapping. Again, this is how our mind maps. So when you get shocked or surprised, realize this didn't shock you because you didn't expect it to happen. It actually shocked you because your brain already thought it could happen, but it removed it out of the possible equations and put it in the spot in your brain where it's like it fired where it wasn't supposed to. So all of a sudden you get shocked. So realize when you're charting all these things that you learn on the charts, you have mapped every scenario out. Realize your mind has already mapped out perfect outcomes. Your mind has already seen there's a 4-hour level that got hit. I was never going to take that. I didn't think it was going to get hit. It actually ended up being the best trade in the world. It was like a 200% plus trade. Like like you got 100x leverage. You even did a 125x. Hell, you did 200x. It nailed perfectly and it went down 30%. And you just made yourself 6,000%. It was the perfect trade. If only your brain already mapped that out. Your brain already saw that before you even made the decision to take that trade. This is what our brain is doing constantly all the time. It's why it gets tired by the end of the day, because it's mapping things all the time. There's two folds to that. The mapping of the brain, what happens at that level when you're mapping and your brain is doing that, the more you map, the less energy you have by the end of the day. So that's why in some of my earlier mental analysis content, I talk about even emotions that are good. If you wake up and your kids are smiling and laughing and they're happy, these are good emotions. They don't feel like they have a weight on us, but realize your brain is still mapping. Your brain is still running through the energy. It's still drawing from the power plant. It's still running through the gasoline that's left in the generator. Your mind maps everything all day long. So realize that when you're learning, and this is the twofold part to that. The first fold is that no matter what you do, your mind is mapping. So you are literally on a biological clock on a daily basis. You are sitting there every single day, mapping and burning fuel. So if you can reduce the amount of things that you need to map, this is where you're most efficient, right? This is where learning makes sense, when your mind doesn't have to map all day long. So this is where I always tell people, like, when you wake up, have an easy morning, as light as the lightest impact. Like, I have this dream scenario, by the way. I've thought about this for years. I have this dream scenario where I have nothing in my life. I don't have a wife. I don't have kids. And it's not a dream scenario like I want it to happen, but I'm thinking in terms of, if I could learn at the highest level and become this superhuman thinker. I sit there and I think, okay, yes, okay, I don't have any external distractions, no kids, no family, no nothing. My phone doesn't ring. Actually, I don't even turn my phone on. My phone stays off. I go to get dressed. I don't even have a choice of clothes. I actually have only 4 shirts and 4 pants. And guess what? They're all the same shirt and pants. I don't even have a decision to make of colors I'm wearing. The impact of my external world is so low that there's no mapping involved. I actually only have, forget 4, I have 2 outfits, a clean one and a dirty one. And I have the clean and dirty, and it's 2 white t-shirts and 2 black sets of pants. I don't have anything else hanging in my closet. I have 1 pair of shoes. My house has no TVs in it. Actually, instead of no TVs, it connects me to nature, where my mind is at its most relaxed state. So it's actually a very open style home. Very much reminds me of Japanese architecture, where your outdoor life and your indoor life meet. But I can't have that in the city, so I have to be somewhere by myself, out around where there's not a single person. So my cycle, and I only have 1 food in my house. It's the same thing I eat every day. There's no decisions to make. I don't decide what clothes I'm going to wear because it's the same clothes. I don't decide what I'm going to eat because every day I have this reliability there. My mind's not mapping things. I have my tea. I don't have coffee because I don't want the idea that I have spikes in my levels of heart rate, or my ability to be awake and excited. Like, I don't have coffee because I don't go through those spikes. I actually just have like a nice lavender tea, something or chamomile tea, something that's very relaxing, something where like I take it and I'm just embodying the lifestyle. And so this to me would be like the ideal version of, and I have 1 room in my house, maybe 2. Maybe I have a room where I sit to take a break away from the charts. And then I have a room where a computer's in it. I have 1 computer with 1 monitor because I don't have this external world that exists. I have just the charts, just to make the best decisions possible that I could ever make, so I could crack the science even deeper. I have this version where there's no mapping that would be the perfect ability for me to think. And that would be the reduction of things in your life. So some balance between some unrealistic perfect scenario like that and your current real life, where the things that you're doing, the mapping doesn't have to become the weighted presence, where you're already functioning at a level of, by the time you get to your computer in the morning, if you've already had to go through things, maybe it's the afternoon, that's even worse. Morning, maybe you're at 90%. So you're doing good, but you're not at your peak. At 80%, you're doing even less good. If you start charting in the afternoon and trading, you're already at 70 or 60%. You're kind of half of what you could potentially be. So realize that at some point in the day, you're halfway of what you could actually be. Is that 1 o'clock? Is that 2 o'clock? Is that noon? I don't know. It depends on your lifestyle and how much you process all day, how much mapping and how your neurons fire, and how disconnected are your neurons. If they're all disconnected because they've been filled with a life of hatred, or at a biological level in your mind, your octagons or hexagons are all spiky and they've damaged your neurons. Well, like, you're getting to that 60% faster. So this is a nice balance between understanding how a lack of neurons firing in your mind
makes you draw gas faster all day. So like, are you drawing gas too fast and starting too late in the day? So there's such a big, interesting debate around this where everybody has to look at their life. And that's why I say self-love, because if you have self-love, you set the parameters of your life that allow you to not further damage your neurons, that allow you to look at yourself and come from a place where your mapping is in a more complete state. And then the repairing of those neurons. So to come to a point where you're not damaging them, and then to repair them after that, you are now making yourself a great thinking human being who has the ability to process properly, right? And then the second part to this is that imagine you've already mapped all the outcomes on your chart. You've already made every perfect trade that Cotton can make or anybody else that you idolize or see or view can make. You've already made those trades in your mind. They've already happened. So now it becomes the ability to, instead of filling in the blanks, because with mapping comes a problem, right? When we map the known outcomes. We map everything. But when you're mapping things, just like my example of throwing a ball in the air, I expect it to hit the ground. Well, I've seen that happen 1,000 times. So I know the outcomes of gravity. Like, this is not a surprise to me. So I've mapped the realistic outcomes. But if you don't understand all the depths of the science, you may map those in your mind, but if you don't understand them, they don't become a high percentage because there's no follow through. It's almost like if you think about a hold level, and we all have a very basic understanding of hold levels. It's a very basic thing. It's just the body of a candle, the furthest one. Like, we all know how they work. There's only a few ways they can map. If we all just take a second and think about hold levels in our head, like it hits, it holds, or it doesn't, it goes down. Like, there's not much to map there. We have these expectations. They're very accurate. And that's it. Like, did it hard close? Yes. Okay. Well, then it's probably going down. And probably only is probably and not certainly, because there may be other time frames. But if all time frames close, then it's going down. And the trend goes, well, certainly it's going down. We've mapped out easy expectations, and there's no improvisional there. So what happens is our brains are constantly mapping and filling in all the events that may or may not happen because we've heard them even once in passing, or we even see them at a level where our brain is processed, but they've never been taught to us. We need to remove the mapping where it's improvisional. So the core component to this is you have to control your brain's ability to improvisionally make outcomes, because that's mapping that's incomplete. So the twofold piece to learning better where you are going and creating your path is a balance between neurons and mapping. So reducing the improvisional nature that we all do. Again, if I throw a ball in the air, I can improvise 1,000 outcomes, but which ones are realistic? And that's the process of learning and getting deeper into the material. So going deeper into the material gives us that ability to stop assuming what's going to happen. So if you continue to learn more and more and more, the first thing you have to do, again, repeating this because it's just so vastly important, self-love, so that you understand how to burn gas, rebuild your neurons so you can learn the material, and then stop improvising or provisioning outcomes that may or may not come true because you're guessing what's supposed to happen. So you're learning at a high level where your neurons are firing, and you're filling in those blanks where your mind is trying to improvise the outcomes. So that leads to accuracy at a high level. That leads to learning the information properly. Because what I see commonly with almost every single student is, it can be a different topic, but I guarantee every single person in this room is guilty of this. Guarantee it. I would put money on it. What happens is, I don't understand how to use range trends. I don't understand what cycles are. Well, I talk about it in plain English in my videos. And then the outcome becomes, go watch it again. Go watch it again. Go watch it again. Pick a topic. Every single person in this room has not understood it or struggles with certain things, such as range trends, such as hold levels. So yet the instructions are clearly labeled in the videos. So why is that? Right? So why is that? That's because there's a lack of mapping or guessing or improvisional data that happens. So we need to remove that. And the way we remove those improvisions, the way we learn better, is by simply understanding that self-love leads to a clear path for our neurons to fire, and getting them to fire deeper in our minds will allow us to learn better, which takes out, and when we learn better, it takes out those improvisional means. So we can start taking out the errors of how we trade and how we learn. So when we watch a video and I say, well, a range trend is this and this and this, all of a sudden you've learned it. You're never going to make that mistake with a range trend again. All of a sudden you've removed, if there was 10 million outcomes on the charts. You've now, by understanding the range trend, you've now removed 5,000 of those bad outcomes, or 10,000 of those bad outcomes, or 20,000 of those bad outcomes. So the more we can remove those bad outcomes, the more we can sit there and strip away bad outcomes and improvisional nature of our mind, the more we can quickly lead to just pure accuracies. You see? So by removing errors, and this is scientifically proven, this is the way it works unequivocally without a doubt. To remove errors in life is to gain knowledge. Or if you wanted to reframe that, the path to becoming smarter is to reduce errors. To learn more, to become a smarter human being, is to remove doubts. That's the quote unquote unequivocal meaning of to become smarter, is to remove errors. And the reason that is because our brain's already doing all this. It already knows everything we're talking about. It's just that your provised outcomes are not clear because you have a bad way your brain is operating. So what do I mean by self-love? Self-love is loving yourself. Self-love is setting boundaries. Self-love is getting in touch with your masculine and feminine side, understanding that masculine and feminine isn't man and woman. It's two parts of the yin and yang. It's two parts of the brain. It's how you have a left hand and a right hand. That's masculine and feminine. It's not about the balance of man and woman and what we represent. Masculine and feminine is just, simply put, two different levels of energy. Both have a space in our brain. We both have both. There's no better or worse. They're all great and equal in their own regard. Self-love is also setting boundaries in life. Self-love is telling yourself that you love yourself. Self-love is respecting yourself to hold people to certain standards in your life while being healthy and not being toxic. Self-love is to stop having anger issues because they're deep repressed emotions that you feel because you haven't dealt with things in your life. There's lots of forms of self-love. And there's a book that I really like for this. Let me pull up my book list here. I think it's called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, but let me get the exact name. Yeah, actually, that's it. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. I'll type that out for people. This, if you want to learn how to self-love yourself, this is the book to do it, because it will teach you how to overcome in life and how to self-love, because this self-love is the path. This is the path to thinking smarter. This is literally a connecting piece, which sounds so out of left field, but it's science. Again, this is proven through biology. This is proven by the world's greatest MRI scientists who study neurons, who study the way the brain works, who studies the way that our brain matter grows, who studies our cortexes, the cerebral nature, DNA. This is science at its truest form, and where it points back to as an origin starting point of how to actually become a smarter human being, and how to learn better, and how to overcome where others can't. And it points back to this here. Let me write this out here. Kamal Ravikant. This book will teach you how to do that. This book will show you that you're valued, that you're worth it. This book will give you all those pieces that allow your mind to fire at the highest level. So people will see this as wishy-washy or this and that people can see it however they want. This is science and biology we're talking about here. Also has massive personal benefits on an emotional side and a side where you're in touch with yourself. Has massive benefits. The ability to love yourself is the ability to grow and think and become a better human being in all regards. Just remember that. So this is how we need to learn going forward. So anybody in here who's starting a path, doesn't matter what step on this path you're at, doesn't matter if you're at the very beginning steps of your path or if you're somewhere in the middle steps of your path, this is a practice that I would. And like, you have to all craft your own paths. But if you're asking me the most optimized way to become the best day trader you can, the first thing I would say is make sure your brain is equipped to intake the information and to regurgitate the information at a level that nobody else can. Because if you can master that, it does not just day trading you're going to conquer in life. It's literally everything. If you can conquer this, it's not just day trading that's going to be affected in your life. It's your ability to drive better. It's going to be the way you save your finances. It's going to be how you are in relationships. It's going to be what you achieve next. If you want to open up a business, it's going to affect you as a CEO. This isn't just about day trading. This is about training our minds and understanding the way they operate so that we can function at a level where other people can't. Because when we function at that level, we can do things they can't. Okay, I'm going to read chat here because that kind of goes for my spiel, because my main focus in this session is we all have a different path we're learning on, and let's focus on how we can learn, or the way in which we can make our journey or our path. And if we can do that at the highest level, it's groundbreaking. Like, it's groundbreaking the strides you'll make. So this is ground zero, patient zero, point alpha, whatever you want to call it. This is the core foundation of becoming, you want to be the world's best day trader? This is the core foundation of it, because what you are doing in this session, if you accept this knowledge, is you are taking your brain and you are upgrading it. You are unlocking potential in your mind that you didn't realize you had. So if you can do that, imagine how much you can learn. Okay, we got a bit of chat to go through here, so I'm going to go through this. I got good at being in my own bubble around these environments, but I don't think it helps in all the long run. Yeah, for sure. My environment is just terrible. Oh, and like, that's something people need to change. That, like, setting boundaries with people is a great thing. Making expectations, like, these are all great things. Perceived notions of self and ability have an unexpected large negative impact. Ability to accomplish things, it's easy. If not aware of that, you end up in this infinity cycle of negativity, making difficult to branch out of the pre-existing confines. And so this is so cool, because what happens here, what you're saying, Moonlight, what happens here is that you're already aware that your brain is equipped to do things that Oppenheimer's a good movie example for this. Like, the man was a genius. Albert Einstein, we all have that in us. It's just how much negativity has removed that from you. We all have Albert Einstein in us. His mind was not different than any of ours. Actually, we have so much more than what he accomplished. The greatest minds in human history have only tapped into 10% of their brains, if that, if even that. And these are the greatest minds in history. We all have it. We all have it. It's just how much was removed from their brains and how much is removed from ours, is the way I like to think about it. What did you do, Cotton? Ayahuasca. So I refrain from saying what I do, because then I want people understanding what makes them comfortable in their journey goes, because you could tell people something and that might not be what's smart for them. But anyways, whatever form of that healing of neurons and the reconnecting of neurons in your mind, like, that's where everybody has to kind of make that decision as to what they're personally comfortable with. And I've gone through that recently. So True says, and it's like, yep. Moonlight Saber says, I think mathematically AI cannot understand cause and effect, just correlation. So AI can only augment the human mind and not replace it. That sounds like an amazing house. Okay, yeah. Yeah, and like, AI is so much dumber than us. It's not even funny. Caffeine can actually increase learning, but just don't do it in the first 1.5 hours after waking up. I failed then today, drank coffee immediately. Damn, Cotton, going deep. I love it. William says, true. Ghost, what do you mean exactly by self-love? Okay, we tackled that. This reminds me of Sadhguru. I might know who that person is, but I'm not sure off the top of my head. Yeah, and this is the book recommendation, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, by Kamal Vikant. Yep. I was learning software engineering before learning trading. Negativity and self-image and perceived ability have such an extreme effect on performance. I was in a negative cycle when learning coding. Yeah, absolutely. Ordered. Thanks, Cotton. Absolutely, Hater. Yes, ordered. Nice, man. Good on you, dude. Get ready to upgrade your mind and your life, actually, everything. Set those boundaries, love yourself, and your life, you go from being a mediocre person to a CEO leading the world. Like, it's that powerful. Ishmael, can I ask a trading question? Sure. I'm not getting into charts, but if it's related to this topic, sure. My wife has been telling me that this is what is holding me back. I don't love myself and talk down to myself. Absolutely, Hater. You have no idea how powerful this will be for you. It will change your life. 100% thoroughly believe that. Really helped me a lot, Cotton. Instead of just saying take responsibility for your life, you really explain the why behind it all, which helps me understand why my learning is the way it is. Thank you. You're welcome. That's the goal. We grow together, we work together, and like, I do a lot of self-work all the time. It's why I'm able to be so proficient at what I do in life. So to be 100%, we need to live like a monk and minimize unnecessary social contact. No, that's not necessarily true. There's balance in life is important too. Balance in life is very important. It's you balance when you learn in the day so that you have the time to have fun with others. We can't be machines and robots. There's different parts of our mind and body that need different attention in different ways. We can't sit here and just say, like, let's go on the path of perfection, because then we're living a sterile life where we're actually doing the opposite of what we're trying to do is being in effect, right? Because then think about it. If all of a sudden your life was so sterile that the point of existing was
If the point of existing was to have this sterile lifestyle where nothing exists outside of just being the perfect human being, we would have a mind that's not expansive. We can't process outcomes. We can't think of new ways in which to connect the dots. Like every time you look outside, you see math, you see cars going 60 miles an hour. You see one going faster than the other one. So your brain's like, okay, well, that one's going 62 miles an hour. And there's trouble because that light's turning yellow. They may crash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are mathematical things that our brain goes through. So you limit your ability to see further left and right if you live too sterile. So this is where balance comes in, right? And then what's the point of living without love? What's the point to live without to experience, right? So that there's definitely a balance there, because that balance also widens the landscape of the neurons, right? It gives you more things to, every time an apple falls off a tree, it hits the ground. There's a mathematical equation that our mind has gone through. This trains us, right? So you definitely don't want to be too far into that realm of live like a monk. And balance is the key. That balance is the key to this. We need to learn how to optimize while setting up a new life. I do this often. I actually rescope my entire identity in terms of the way I live and the things I do on a daily basis. This is actually a common practice for me, has been since I was in my teenage years. I rescope, like all of a sudden I'm going to be thinking differently. I just kind of always look at where I can improve. And then all of a sudden I start as like this new person, right? Like I'm constantly in a mode of reinventing my emotional state, the things I value in life, what I can take and perceive, constantly just trying to grow, constantly facing the uncomfortable, constantly, whether it be talking about my feelings to somebody, it doesn't matter, whether it be accepting a new demographic of people, it doesn't matter. I'm constantly like resculpting my emotional cores, always, because that is to grow as well, right? So you definitely, you have to have balance. You have to. This definitely changed my perspective. Love you, Cotton. Love you, hater. Not necessarily says Nitsa. Yeah, this way of thinking definitely matches Sadhguru. It's very interesting. I'm going to look up this person up after, because maybe I know who this is, but is this recorded? Yes, I did record this. I've loved the book recommendation. Do you have any other book? Oh, I've read hundreds of books. I read books all the time. Yeah, I mean, give me a topic, right? Like I read books all the time. It's very topic dependent. Like this is something that it could be like, what's the topic? You know what I mean? I read books on everything from Karma Sutra to the struggles of different ethnicities of women coming into America, just so I can put myself in other people's shoes to see the struggles they choose, to books like The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like my range of books is always very wide. I'm a constant connoisseur of knowledge. I just love it. And I love constantly being able to understand the way I operate so that I can further push in life. So pick a topic. I've read about it. Like that's just how I like to do things. Like that's just, there's the next book I'm going to read is called The New Psycho-Cybernetics. I find that a very interesting one to read next. That's my next read. And so this says, tap into the power of new psycho-cybernetics. Much about what we learn about success is on the pain/gain idea. In essence, work harder, be more persistent, develop greater willpower. The new psycho-cybernetics formula is anything but painful. It allows you to achieve all your goals faster, easier, and with less strain than you ever thought possible. So it's just about a book of deprogramming yourself, of like negative thoughts, deprogramming negative thoughts, because that falls into the idea of pain or gain, which is also a negative thought. It's a very toxic path, right? So this is, I find very interesting. So that's next on my read list. More book recommendations that align with mental analysis. What kind of mental analysis? There's lots. We find perfect entry for scalps. Yeah, I mean, I do that in the courses for sure. I have that book, Psycho-Cybernetics. Oh, cool. Have you read it? Is it good? I'm reading Moonlight's thing here. It's about Seneca. The book is named Seneca, maybe, or this is a topic. Understanding of self and where your social norms end. Yeah, this is really well spoken. And understanding your true potential outside the confines of social conditioning. Yeah. How many pages can you read a day? 100 or 2. Yeah, 100 or two. BlackRock has 1% of Bitcoin. What do you think about that? Cool. Not much. Don't care. I just trade to make money. Atomic Habits. Yeah, I have that book, Atomic Habits. Yeah, it's a good book. I found I drowned out in Atomic Habits a little bit. Where did I make it into Atomic Habits? Let me look. I have it bookmarked here. Where is it? No, that's Attention Revolution. Where is Atomic Habits? I have this book. Like, I made it over halfway through Atomic Habits, and for some reason I couldn't stay in. How come I can't find it? Hold on. I have it. Here we go, Atomic Habits. Yeah, so I made it to chapter 11. A Roman Stoic philosopher and playwright. Okay. Anything's possible, Ghost. Huber. Oh yeah, I listen to Huberman all the time. He does a lot of work into the sleep world. I've listened to most of Andrew Huberman stuff. I watch his YouTube content. Sleep hacking stuff is like life changing. Book recommendations about decision making. That would be. Look at my list. Probably The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck would be a good one, but that falls more into like, yeah, I would say that. Yeah, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is a good book for that. Decision making, yeah, because it works on like fundamental level stuff. Or The Power of Habit would be another good one for that. The Power of Habit is really good for that because it just gets you into understanding how to always have the same, like how your voice becomes stronger. So The Power of Habit is really good. No, otherwise, no, Chart Raiders, Next Life Goals Chart Raiders. And then I got more after that. Absolutely not. I have not, absolutely not reached all my life goals. I have lots on the shelf still. I'll be working till I'm 90. How much do you sleep? Well, like ideally I sleep 7 to 8 hours a night, but that's not always the reality because of Chart Raiders. So, when Chart Raiders is launched, hopefully I'll be able to catch up on all that missed time, but you know, yeah. We're in the last minute of this event. So I'm going to answer a few last questions, or just look at a few last things. And then, yeah, people can continue this chat and open chat for sure. Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind is a classic, great book, relates to these books, I think. Yeah, probably. Life goals, that's a lot longer than a 1 minute answer. My next life goal is just freeing everybody I can from the prison that they build in the financial markets. That's hence Chart Raiders. My next life goal is to make Chart Raiders a global success so that I can help people get released from the prison that is the financial markets. Because that's a prison that's very ugly. Investigate Ayurveda. Investigate. Do you read or investigate Ayurveda? Oh, do I read or investigate Ayurveda? No, I don't even know what this is. Let me Google this. The knowledge of life based on the idea that disease is due to imbalance or stress in a person's cause. I believe that. Body, mind, spirit, and environment, interventions of natural therapies. Yeah, I believe that. What can you do to start the journey to self-love? Read that book, Chindo. That would be my number one recommendation, is read that book, because that will help you understand what it looks like. And there's exercises in that book. There's meditations. There's examples of what it looks like. It's a really good book. It's a really good book.
It has everything from examples of real life things that have happened to the author that are very relatable, by the way. Things like, oh, I broke up with a person and I couldn't get over them. And then it relates that into self-love. Or how to find, you speak to a friend and they're like, oh, you seem different. You seem stronger and more powerful. There's like a very wide range of different life environments where this is what it looked like before I love myself. This is what it looked like after I love myself. And before that, there's meditative states. There's the acknowledgement and the understanding of what it means. It's a very good book. It's very well encompassing. It's very well rounded. It just very much touches on the full cycle of what that looks like. So that is like a really amazing book. And that is a great starting point. No, it's not only 50 pages. Get the updated version, get the, there's here, I'll link it in chat. There's a couple versions of this that came out. There was like a new updated version, and then there's like the old version. Because the new updated version is 240 pages. There's just like a link from a Canadian site. But if you look at the part where it says see more details, it'll show you there's 240 pages. Because this is the second release of this book. Chart Rater is going to be available in summer. And we're sending out emailers about this in the coming weeks. You're a legend. Thanks, NC. Hey, Nitsa. What do you think about religion, Cotton? Not much. Everybody's got to live their own path. I don't believe in organized religion, and that's it. I believe in spirituality. I believe in energy. I believe in spirituality. I believe in living life my fullest. I don't believe that a group of people can help me understand my life goals. Okay, everybody, thank you so much for being here. That'll be it for this, and I hope this has really helped a lot of people understand how we can learn better, and not only learn better, just become better human beings in general, and just in all regards of life, whether it's day trading. We're all here to learn how to become better day traders, but this will help in every regard in life. So yeah, just thanks all for being here.